Good evening. My name's Russell Morahan, and I'm a dude who lives in London in the United Kingdom. And some of you may know me, and some of you may not. Um, hmm. But I, Russell, am a philosopher. Uh, I've been a philosopher for quite a long time. I suppose for as long as I could think, right? But I didn't always know what philosophy was. Philosophy is an acquired taste, I suppose, and I suppose I really started becoming a philosopher when I understood what philosophy was, which was when I was a teenager, right? So, what is philosophy? Well, philosophy, first off, is um, is a Greek word composed of two parts, philo and sophy. And philo means love, and sophy means wisdom. So, philosophy means the love of wisdom. Now, I say that, I mean, some of you may know that already, but there's a lot of people who don't know that, and it's such a beautiful thing, such a lovely thing that philosophy means in Greek, the love of wisdom. I think it's a beautiful thing, right? So I just thought I'd explain that. Okay. So why am I making this video? Um, well, there are two reasons. One is that I really love philosophy, right? I think philosophy's really good for people, and it's really good for human beings, right? To seek after what is wise and what is good and what is right. And as far as I understand, that's the pursuit of philosophy. So that's reason one. And the second reason two, why I'm making this video, is because I've recently discovered a YouTuber from America. He's an American YouTuber called Lex Friedman. Okay, and Lex Friedman is awesome. Okay, he's awesome. Right, he's really cool. Like, he's a super nice guy. He's really kind. He's really earnest. He's really earnest, right? And he's really kind. And the thing that's great about Lex is that he's a philosopher. Okay, he's someone who loves wisdom, right? He's trying to find the truth. Okay. Uh, And I've watched some of his podcasts, and you can find his podcast on YouTube. Just search Lex Friedman, Lexfriedmen, I believe. Right? Search Lex Friedman on YouTube. You'll find his podcasts. They're great, man. I mean, he has some really, intelligent, clever people on there talking. Having some really interesting conversations. Okay, and they're really great conversations. Right. Um. Now, I admire people who seek after the truth, because I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing for people to seek after the truth, right? Um, or people who discuss philosophical matters in order to try to reach some kind of wise conclusions. I think that's wise. I think that's a good thing. Um, but one of the things that I notice, and I think this is a kind of recurrent issue in modern day philosophical discourse, is I think that there is some confusion about the nature of truth, right? It seems to me that there is a great deal of confusion about what truth is, and perhaps about whether or not truth even exists, right? Whether or not truth is something that we can even discuss, right? maybe truth as a concept is this unknowable thing that we as human beings cannot attain to. Okay. Now that's not what I believe, right? So, and that's actually going to be the title of this video, okay? Because that is what I'm going to talk about this evening. Is I'm going to talk about the nature of truth, the nature of truth, right? So the title of this video will be on the nature of truth, okay? I'm going to tell you all what I think the nature of truth is, okay? And I hope you'll find the things that I have to say interesting, right? I'm not, I'm not the, I'm not the premier authority on this subject, but I'll do my best to explain it to the best of my ability. Okay. All right. So on the nature of truth, right? And this is, this is in sort of, in answers to those two points, like one, in search of philosophy, in search of wisdom, and two, to try and assist my friend in spirit. Well, I don't know the guy, but to try and assist my friend in spirit, Lex Friedman, in his philosophical inquiries. Right? Okay. You have to forgive me because I like a bit of wine, right? And you know, I like to smoke some tobacco, and that's just my character. It's got nothing to do with philosophy, so don't take that as a comment on philosophy. This is my character. Okay. So I'm just gonna roll myself a cigarette. Right. Now, what is truth? Does truth exist? Right. I think that philosophical discourse, philosophical discussion, philosophical academia can seem quite intimidating, right? It can seem quite complicated when you start talking about such questions as, well, what is the nature of reality? You know, how can I know what I can know? What is epistemology? Right? These seems like complicated questions. But to me, truth is not a complicated thing. Right? It's a very profoundly simple thing. And that is where its beauty lies. That is where the true sort of wonderful essence of truth exists. Is it exists in its simplicity. Because the truth is fundamentally simple, right? The truth is also complex. And the truth is definitely also complex, but it's also very simple, right? And that's one of the things that's one of the qualities of truth, right? Is that it can be both simple and complex at the same time. Okay. Now, at the most fundamental level, truth is really just what's right in front of our faces, right? Um, and I think it's important to verify and understand that. Okay. Um, and all of us deal with truth every single day in our daily lives, and we couldn't live without it. Okay, it's like a fundamental part of life, right? We just naturally live with it. And what I mean by that is, you know, we all know that fire burns, right? Fire burns you, and cold is not pleasant for you, right? That's a truth. That's the truth. It's the truth. There's no one in the world, no one anywhere on planet Earth, or perhaps in the universe. But I can't speak about that because I haven't been there, right? But there's nowhere on planet Earth. There's no one on planet Earth who's going to turn around to you and say, "Oh well, fire doesn't burn you," or "Frost doesn't make you cold." No one's going to say that. It's unreasonable. It's unreasonable to debate those obvious, clear facts, right? Fire burns, frost makes you cold. That is the truth. That's the truth, right? Um, so at its most simple level, the truth is really just the fact. It's really just the facts, and it's really not much more than that. Truth is really, you know, sorry, my microphone. Truth is really not much more than just the facts, right? But it gets a little bit more complicated the deeper you go into it. And I'm going to try and go a little bit deeper into the nature of truth, okay? Or my comprehension of the nature of truth, all right? So we know that fire burns, you know, um, cold freezes. No one would dispute that. But there is sometimes a tendency to dispute the nature of truth. All right, and there are many people, or there are people in society, or for good or for ill, who sometimes like to dispute the nature of the truth. Right? They say, well, fire burns you and cold freezes you, but there's some other person in the world who doesn't get burned by fire. I'm not saying this is true, but they're just giving it as an example. I'm just giving it as an example. Well, that person doesn't get burned by fire, so therefore it's not absolutely true that fire burns. Okay? Now, that's a fair philosophical argument, but all it's really saying is that there are often exceptions to the rule, right? So we may know that fire burns and cold freezes and that gravity pulls us down, right? Now there may be examples of people, I don't think there are, but there may be examples, because I don't know 100%, so I have to admit my ignorance. There may be example of people who get made no, and this is where the argument really kind of breaks down. Let me give you because there's no such thing as a person who gets made cold by fire. It just doesn't exist, right? It's the truth that fire burns and cold freezes, and there's really nobody in the world. There's no living organism in the world that is capable of responding differently to those phenomenon, right? So it is safe to say that fire burns and cold freezes, right? But let's take because we have to sort of go down this rabbit hole and see where it leads us, right? What about one of the things that I always like to say is, well, it is the truth that the sky is blue, right? And some other people like to come to me and say, well, how do we really know that? Maybe the sky isn't blue. Maybe it's just you who perceive it to be blue, but I perceive it to be green. That other person says, well, I perceive it to be green, right? And it's just because, you see blue and I see green. Wherever I see blue, that other person sees green, and we've got a consensus. We've got a consensus linguistic decision in our language to call this particular phenomena blue. can that lead into proving that the other person sees blue, right? And many people, I mean, believe me, this ideology is much more, common than you might think. Is that many people use the notion of the exception to the rule to dispute the rule, right? To say that the rule itself is not true just because there is an exception to it, right? I would argue, and I'm gonna try and analyze this a bit more deeply. I would argue that that's a kind of an intellectual mistake, and I'm going to try and sort of analyze that a bit more. Okay, so for example, I can make the statement, the sky is blue. Okay, now I perceive the sky to be blue, and I know personally inside of myself the experience of blueness and it's called qualia, right? The experience of blueness, or qualia means the experience of the thing. Like, what is the experience of the thing, right? And I know the qualia of blueness, right? And I know what that is, right? Now, it's my personal belief, right? It's my personal belief that everyone else around me in the world, like 99% of everyone else, basically experiences the same thing, right? They might not experience it in exactly the same way as me, but it's my personal belief that they do actually experience the same thing, okay? And the reason I believe that is because of our understanding of science, right, and our understanding of electromagnetic radiation, right? Because basically there's light coming off the sky, and the light is being, sort of refracted by the, it's being, you know, it, the light is passing through the atmosphere, and the atmosphere is changing its color, right? And so we receive blue light from the sky, right? And we've got eyes, and we know how the eyes work, right? Because we can sort of, pop them. Well, if we've got dead people, we've got some dead specimens. We can pop the eye out and dissect it, and like we know how it works, right? It's basically a camera, right? It basically works like a camera, right? And it receives electromagnetic radiation, which it converts into into electrical pulses that it feeds into the brain, and we see blue, right? Now we know we know that's the way it works, and we know that basically the mechanical apparatus of the eye and the electromagnetic radiation of the light coming from the sky is basically the same for everybody. And so it stands to reason then that everybody sees blue. But then you get these people, who are like, well, no, that's not the truth, because some people are colorblind. Okay. Now, I'm not disputing that some people are colorblind. Okay. What I'm disputing is that just because there is an exception to the rule, that exception to the rule invalidates the rule, right? Just because there is a minority of people that do not perceive the sky to be blue, that there's something wrong with their eyes, right, or something to do with their neurological architecture, right, that means that they cannot see color, right, that they see the world perhaps in black and white, or in sort of in a a degraded or a lesser, or maybe even a greater means. Maybe they see more colors than we do. I don't know, right? But just because they see the world differently from the majority of the people, does not invalidate the fact that the majority of us see it as blue, and there is this thing called blue, and the reason we see blue is because the sky is blue, right? So here's my point, which is that the exception to the rule does not invalidate the rule. There is always an There's pretty much always an exception to the rule. Not always, but probably a lot of the time there's often an exception to the rule, but it doesn't invalidate the rule. And it doesn't mean that saying that the sky, it doesn't mean that just because sometimes the sky is not blue to some people, does not mean that it's not true to say that the sky is blue. Saying that the sky is blue is still a statement of truth. Okay. Yeah. Now that's all quite simple stuff. Okay. Um, and I think what I've just explained really is all I'm really talking about is just it's just inverted commas facts. You know. Um, and I think that deep down that's really all truth is. It's just facts. Um, you know, there's been a lot of there's been a lot of kind of like I think it's over the last decades there's been a lot of confusion about what truth is. And I think that's a bit sad that there's been so much confusion about what truth is. Like I've heard ideas banded around like, oh well, excuse me, oh well this is my truth and that's your truth, right? Um, and I think that that's the notions like that are, while they may not be may not be ill intentioned, they are philosophically incorrect because the whole point about truth is that truth is about facts, right? Truth is not about opinion, right? I like I know some people are going to be upset with me about this. Okay. I like pineapple on pizza. Okay. Right, I do. I like pineapple on pizza. Okay. Now, many people would disagree with me about that and say, Russell, you're wrong. Pineapple on pizza is bad. Okay. They're perfectly entitled to think that. But I personally like pineapple on pizza. Okay. All right. It is not fair, it is not right to say that pineapple on pizza is objectively good. That pineapple on pizza is objectively tasty. That is not a statement of truth. Okay. Nor is it a statement of truth to say pineapple on pizza is objectively bad. Right? They're both they're value judgments, right? They're subjective opinions or subjective appraisals of a particular set of events, right? So to say that pineapple pizza is tasty is is not is not a statement of truth, nor to say pineapple pizza is bad tasting, nor is that a statement of truth. A statement of truth could be it is true to say that some people like pineapple on pizza while others don't. That is a statement of truth. Yeah. The point about truth is that it's not about opinion. Truth is not opinion. Okay. Um, Truth is beyond opinion. Right. Um, you know, Facts are beyond opinion. It's not my opinion. It's not my personal opinion that gravity exists. That's not an opinion. It's a verifiable fact that we recognize and observe every single day in the world, right? So it's safe to then say that it is the truth that gravity exists. It is the truth that gravity pulls things down to the earth. Okay? Yeah. Okay. There's no such thing as inverted commas alternative facts or alternative truths. They don't exist. Um, do they not exist? I'm not hesitating because I'm uncertain about this. I'm hesitating because I want to try and I want to try and think honestly about whether or not that's true. Um, I don't think they do. Okay, I don't think there is such a thing as alternative facts or alternative truths. Okay, I think that the whole point of the concept of truth is that the truth is something that exists beyond us, right? The truth is, like I said, the truth is not about opinion. The truth is not about subjective point of view. The truth is about what is. The truth is about what is, right? I had a lovely saying. I had a lovely saying from somebody. Um, yeah, I think it goes something like this. You know, in an argument between two people, there's always my side and your side, and then there's the truth, right? And I'm not saying it correctly, but it's basically that. There's my side and or there's my truth and your truth, and then there's the truth, right? That's right in between us. I've got my subjective perspective on the world. I've got my subjective perspective of the world, and you've got your subjective perception of the world, right? And they might be inverted commas our truths, but then there's the world, right? And the world, whether we like it or not, actually exists independently of us and independently of our perception of it. Okay, and that's the point of the truth, right? Is this? It's about trying to come to a common agreement about what the nature of the world is and about what the nature of reality is. That's not based on our That's not based on our subjective experience. Okay, that's based on facts, right? And then you can take this sort of this philosophical exploration further and kind of ask, well, well, right. So then you encounter the concept of empiricism, right? And empiricism is the philosophical or inverted commas epistemological ideology that we can only know the things, we can only know the information that is conveyed to us through our senses, right? Through our eyes, our ears, our mouth, our sense of touch, right? So we can only know things that are conveyed to us through our senses. And that is the basis. Empiricism is the basis of modern science. Okay, and I'm very very strongly in agreement with empiricism. I think that empiricism is a very very convincing a very convincing philosophical ideology. Okay, because it works, right? And it conforms to our general perception of the world, right? Like we all look at the sky, and 99% of us, maybe even 99.9% of us see it as blue, right? That's empiricism. Yes, there are examples of people who don't, but that doesn't mean that just because one person doesn't see it as blue, that it's not blue. It might just be them, right? No offense to people who suffer from visual impairments or anything like that's part of nature, and bless you, right? But it doesn't mean the sky is not blue. Okay. So empiricism is a very important ideology about telling us what is true and what is not true. Okay, the whole of science is based on empiricism. We can empirically validate an experiment through repetition of experimentation to validate that that is true, right? Newton's law, F equals ma, force equals mass times acceleration. We can verify that theory, that scientific philosophical idea, through experimentation, and our senses convey to us the information that it's right, that it works, and so we can then say, well, F equals ma is true, right? It's truth. It's a statement of truth, right? The problem, the problem with the problem with empiricism. Sorry, I'm just gonna smoke another cigarette because it helps me think. Because I'm a silly person. The problem with empiricism is that empiricism is an ideology based upon the observation of the material world, right? And there's nothing wrong with him observing the material world. No one's going to disagree with the idea that observing the material world is good. We need to do that for our survival, etc., etc. But empiricism says that we can only know things that are conveyed to us through our senses: our eyes, sight, hearing, touch, and taste, right, and smell. The problem is that that is not the only kind of information that is conveyed to human beings. That's not the only kind of information that we as human beings experience. We experience other kinds of information that are not entirely conveyed to us through those five sensory channels, right? The most obvious example of this is dreams. Okay, so dreams are not conveyed to our consciousness, to our conscious awareness, or to our awareness, whether it's conscious or unconscious. Dreams are not conveyed to our awareness through our senses, right? So, when I'm dreaming and I dream that I'm on a beautiful beach, in the sunshine, sitting there watching the waves roll onto the shore in a dream, right? That information is not coming through my eyes, right? When I'm dreaming that, I'm fast asleep in my bed, with my eyes closed, and I'm like 250 miles from the coast, right? So, so that information is not coming through my eyes, right? I live in an apartment block, in central London, right? That information is not coming to me through my eyes. It's coming to me through some other channel of information that we presumably don't as yet understand. Okay. Now the whole concept of dreaming is another massive subject that I'm not going to go into in this video, but the point I'm making is that in that dreaming state there is information being conveyed to the mind, to the human consciousness, that is not coming through the senses, right? And the problem with this is that it invalidates empiricism, right? Because empiricism says the only knowledge and the only information that we can know as humans is conveyed to us through our senses. Now that's a totally valid point when you're observing the external world, right? Like no one's gonna say, well, I need to work out how fast that car can go, with this much petrol, right, based on the dream I had last night. Like, no one's going to think that's a rational way to behave, right? That's fine. So we recognize that empiricism is incredibly useful for observing the material world and understanding the material world. That's great, right? But the problem with empiricism, and one of the problems with modern day materialistic science, is that it tries to limit everything to empiricism. And we have to recognize that actually there's a lot of information that is conveyed to the mind and conveyed to human consciousness that doesn't actually come from the senses, that doesn't come from the eyes or the ears, okay? So dreaming is one of those, okay? Yeah, dreaming is one example. Now, the next most obvious example, right, is the mind itself. Okay, we're all human beings. We all have a mind, right? I would argue even animals have a mind. They certainly have animal minds as opposed to human minds, but they still have minds. Okay, and we all have emotions. We have emotions. We have feelings. Okay. And I think animals do as well. Okay. Now, I think it's pretty clear to everybody. I think it's pretty clear and pretty fairly obvious to everybody that the mind, our minds, and our emotions, right, are not actually conveyed to us as sentient living beings through our senses, right? I'm sitting here right now in my apartment in London. I can see the wall. I can see the paintings on my wall. I can hear the fans in my PC spinning. I can feel myself sitting in the chair. I can taste the remnants of the red wine that I've been drinking. Red wine, yeah. Don't do that at home, kids. Yeah, I can taste the red wine, and I can smell. I can't really smell anything at the moment. I can't, right? But maybe if there were some flowers in my room, I could smell them. So that's information conveyed to me by my senses. But I think we're all pretty much aware that the mind is not conveyed through those channels. The mind is something that we're aware of, right? But it's not coming to us through our empirical, it's not coming through us through our senses. It must be some other kind of sense. When I lie in bed in the morning and I think about the day, I think to myself, well, what am I going to do today? Um, I'm gonna make a work of art. I'm gonna write a poem. I'm gonna write a piece of philosophy, right? That's not coming through my senses. That's information inside my mind, right? Now, whether or not ultimately that information came from my senses or whether it didn't, yeah, that's a different question we're not going to get into. What I'm trying to say is that the mind and our emotions are a phenomenon that we perceive. They are an informational phenomenon that we perceive, that is not in the moment that we experience them, is not conveyed to us through our senses, right? So when I experience the feeling of joy, right? Or when I experience the feeling of love, right? Like I think about my loved one, my family member, or my romantic, my romantic interest. Um, I experience an emotion inside of myself, and yet that emotion is not conveyed to me through the senses, through the physical senses of empiricism. I experience it, right, but it is not is not. Well, I mean, who knows if it's a physical phenomenon or not? I'm not so much talking about. I'm not trying to describe whether it is or it isn't. What I'm just all I'm saying is that there are other sensory channels other than the senses, other than the five senses, right? And this is also true of memory. This is also true of memory, okay? Because like if I go out and have an experience, like okay, I'm just recall random experience, from when I was a teenager, going cycling on my bicycle in London, having a really nice time cycling on my bicycle. I can literally picture that right now inside of my head. I can remember what it looks like. I can remember how it felt. I have some certain information about that experience, um, and that's information stored inside of me, but it's not being conveyed to me by my senses. I can't, like, when I remember cycling on a bicycle when I was 16 years old, I don't see it in my eyes. It's just like an interior vision. It's like an interior vision where I can recount those images, right? So what I'm saying is that there is an interior experience inside human beings, okay? And that interior experience is on some level in conflict with the ideology of empiricism. Now, I'm not saying it invalidates empiricism. What I'm saying is that it's kind of it's an adjunct, or it's like an additional layer of experience on top of empiricism. Okay. Now, I think much more research and much more investigation needs to be done into the nature of the mind and the nature of the emotions. Okay, so I'm not going to try and analyze that subject too much more, but I just want to make the point that there are other sensory channels. There are other informational channels other than just the senses. Okay, so what does this have to do with the truth? Okay, well, the problem, the problem that we face, or the problem that I think that we face in modern society, is that we only validate things that we can empirically prove. Okay, so there's an aeroplane flying through the sky. Me and Roger and John, my two friends, right, can both see the aeroplane, so we can, all three of us, empirically validate the existence of the aeroplane in the sky. That's cool. That's great, right? But the problem, so that's great because we've all got eyes that can see the aeroplane. It's great. The problem occurs when people, human beings, have interior phenomenon occurring, the phenomena of their minds, right? And unfortunately, other people can't perceive those things because that information is not being conveyed to us through our senses, through our physical senses, right? And so because it's not being conveyed to us through our physical senses, other people can't see them. Okay? Does that mean they're not real? Question mark. Just because other people can't perceive your emotions, does that mean that your emotions are not real? Or that your dreams are not real? Or that your memories are not real? But just because other people can't perceive them with their eyes and ears. Now, I think any reasonable person would agree with me that such a proposition, that just because other people can't perceive my memories, that invalidates my memories, is absurd. It's an idiotic point of view. Okay. Just because other people can't directly validate my memories doesn't mean that my memories are invalid. Okay. And I think everybody can just agree with that out of common sense, right? So, do you guys see, guys and girls, see what I'm getting at here about the complicated nature of truth, right? You know, when we're dealing, when we're dealing with when we're dealing with the physical world, it's fairly easy for us to all validate the truth because we can all see it and we can all touch it and hear it and smell it, and it's right in front of us. And that's good. It's good that we can all agree, on the nature of the material world, and that's really important for us all to work together. That we can all agree on what's in front of our faces. These things that have been happening recently in the recent years, such as fake news and alternative facts. They're really bad. They're really really bad for people's ability to recognize the facts and the realities in front of us and work together, to find communal solutions to the problems that face us as human beings, right? So, hopefully we can all agree on that, right? But then we come into the domain of the interior world, of the interior life of the human being, right? Now, science has not really done a very great job of understanding the interior life, right? I'm not going to say it's not done any job, okay, because we have things like psychiatry and psychology that do try to study the mind. But because of this bias towards empiricism, there is a general tendency to disregard the experiences of interior consciousness as less, less than real, or because they're not provable, they're somehow lesser on the scale of validity, right? And I think this is a genuine mistake in intellectual exploration, or in intellectual honesty. Okay, because we all experience our thoughts and our memories, and so it's a bit silly to invalidate them, right? And the problem with materialistic science and the problem with empiricism, okay, I'm not saying empiricism is wrong. I'm just saying that explain all of the. It doesn't explain all of the phenomenon. You know, like Newton's laws are great for explaining most phenomenon, but they don't explain, you know, astronomical phenomenon very well as Einstein's laws, right? Maybe empiricism is really great for understanding basic stuff to do with our senses, but empiricism doesn't give us the whole picture, right? In the same way that Newton's laws didn't give us the whole picture, and Einstein's laws gave us a much deeper picture of the universe, right? So maybe there's another ideology beyond empiricism, right? That can give us a deeper insight into the nature of truth, right? Okay. Cowabunga. Be excellent to one another. Party on, dudes. Sorry. So just because a phenomenon or an experience is occurring inside of ourselves, does that mean it's not real? Is it any less real than the phenomenon that we experience outside of ourselves? You know, I might experience a feeling of love towards another human being or towards an animal. Is that feeling, that emotion, is that emotion, that feeling any less real than the aeroplane that's flying through the sky? Is the aeroplane more real than my emotion? Or are they both equally real? But they're different kinds of phenomenon. The problem with materialistic science and the problem with empiricism is that it is fundamentally unequipped to deal with interior experience. Okay? So in order to in order to try to in order to try to solve that conundrum, that problem of the disconnect between inner and outer experience that is proposed by empiricism, I'd like to present a solution. Okay? And this is my solution, a solution that I've figured out presumably by myself, for myself, right? Yeah, I'm not claiming credit for it, okay? Great ideas don't belong to any one man, they belong to all humanity, okay? Um, but before I talk more about that, I just want to address the misconception that there is really something called subjectivity. And this is a bit complicated, but like I think there's a terrible misconception that there is actually something called that subjectivity exists, right? Because actually, although subjectivity certainly does exist, right? Like I, Russell Morahan, am a subject, right? I am a subject of the universe, and the universe is the object, and I, the subject, perceive the object, the universe, right? And that's true for everybody. Okay. So there's this kind of notion that, like, well, subjective experience is somehow invalid, right? Like, subjective experience is not as good. That's the whole ideology underlying modern science, right? It's like, well, it's only true, it's only true if more than one person can validate it, right? That's great. I mean, it's really good. I mean, it's a really good ideology. But there's a problem. The problem with it is, like, well, what happens when somebody has a subjective experience that no one else can validate, right? Does that, just because someone else can't validate it, does that mean that my experience isn't true just because someone else can't validate it, right? Well, I would argue no, it isn't. My subjective is my subjective experience is still my subjective experience. Just because it can't be validated through empiricism and through science doesn't mean it's not real. It just means that it's my subjective experience, right? Okay. I personally don't actually think that there really is such a thing as subjective experience, right? I actually think that all of us human beings, actually perceive the world objectively, right? Because the world exists objectively. That is, it does exist, and it is real, right? It is the truth. It is factual. We all experience the world objectively, but it is our minds that color our experience. It's like our minds are a filter that get in the way of direct experience of the world, and we make subjective judgments and statements and form ideas and concepts and likes and dislikes, aversions and, attractions and aversions towards various things. But it is only those subjective phenomenon that are subjective. I'm arguing that actually, deep down, we all actually perceive the world objectively, which is that we all, you know, forgive me, colorblind people, God bless you, and I understand, right? But I actually believe that we all perceive the sky to be blue because the sky is blue, and we actually perceive it. We all perceive it the same because we all have the same sensory apparatus, and basically, I'm not saying we're all the same. We're definitely all individuals, and we definitely all have, our own unique characteristics and traits that make us truly us and make us truly unique individuals. But deep down, there is a fundamental commonality about the nature of the universe and about the nature of reality. And that, in my understanding, is what truth is. Truth is the underlying commonality and objectivity of existence, right? Um, and empiricism doesn't tackle this problem. Okay. Now, haha, I'm going to go on to my, you know, my ultimate theory. Okay, which is the sort of, yeah, it's the thing I really wanted to talk about in this video. Um, yeah. Hmm. I have this large beard. I can twirl it and look as if I am wise. No, it's my screensaver. Damn you, screensaver. Damn you, screensaver. I need to, I always forget to disable my screensaver for these videos. Really sorry about that. I hope you forgive me. Alright, so I've nearly got to the end. And I've got one great, awesome theory to propose to you. And it's something I've felt so deeply about for years. About the nature of reality and about the nature of truth. All right. Remember, the title of this video is "On the Nature of Truth." Right. On the nature of truth. What is the nature of truth? So I'm going to get to it in a minute. You just have to bear with me. Good things come to those who wait. Don't hate me, please. It's the early hours of the morning here in London, and there are brooding clouds drifting across the sky. Framing a sullen and dreamy horizon. What is the nature of truth? What is it for you? What do you think the nature of truth is? Do you agree with the things that I've said in this video? Have any of the things I've said been helpful? I hope so. I hope so. Yeah. All right, I'm nearly there. So I have this theory. Um, which I think, and the goal of this theory is to try to solve the problem of empiricism, the inability of empiricism to deal with interior experience. Okay? So, my theory that I believe solves this problem is the theory of the phenomenal universe. The theory of the phenomenal universe. The fundamental basis of the theory of the phenomenal universe is the idea that all phenomenon occur in the universe. That we exist in only one. I mean, I'm not going to go into the concept of alternate dimensions or string theory or any of that kind of stuff. Okay, I'm a more simple man than that. Okay, I'm not invalidating any of those ideas. Those ideas are cool and awesome. Okay, but they're talking about different things. I'm really talking about epistemology. I'm more of a philosopher than I am a scientist, and I'm really talking about epistemology and like what we can know and how we should think about the things that we can know. Okay, so for me, the theory of the phenomenal universe solves the problem that empiricism faces, because of the fact that empiricism is only equipped to deal with phenomenon that exist outside of the human mind, right? Or that exist outside of the human entity, outside of the human sort of individuality, right? The theory of the phenomenal universe, that's my theory, right? Says that all phenomenon, every single phenomenon, occurs in this universe. In this universe of facts and rules and laws, right? So when you see an aeroplane in the sky flying across the sky, you're like, okay, that's real. That's occurring in the phenomenal. That's occurring in the phenomenal universe. When you have a dream and you dream that you travel to a different city somewhere in the world and you have an experience where you meet people of a different culture in your dream, right? It's a dream. It's a dream. It's certainly not the same as the aeroplane that's happening in physical reality, but the dream is still a phenomenon, and it is a phenomenon that is occurring in the physical universe. Sorry, not in the physical universe. That's my mistake. It's a phenomenon that is occurring in the phenomenal universe, i.e., dreams are a phenomenon that occur in the phenomenal universe, right? And the same thing is true of all of the other phenomenon that we can't yet explain through science, through empiricism. Now, I'm not making any kind of characteristic statements about the nature of the events that occur in the phenomenal universe, right? So I'm not saying they're right or wrong. What I'm saying is that they are experiences, and they do exist. Okay? And what's more, they exist as objective phenomenon. Even though they exist as an objective phenomenon, even though we as individuals perceive them subjectively. For example, if I have a memory, remember the memory I recounted earlier on, the memory of my being a teenage boy riding my bicycle through London, right? Driving my bicycle through the streets of London. Okay, that's a memory that I personally experience subjectively. Okay, I experience it subjectively. However, that phenomenon of of experiencing the memory is a phenomenon that is occurring in the phenomenal universe, right? That experience, that that functionality of me remembering. It is a subjective experience for me as me, Russell Morahan, as a subjective observer, but it is also an objective phenomena that is occurring in the universe, in this universe that we all inhabit, right? So what I'm basically trying to prove through philosophical discourse and through philosophical explanation and through philosophical argument, I mean argument in like a positive way, is that empiricism is not capable. Empiricism alone, as a philosophical and epistemological ideology, is not capable alone of explaining all of the phenomenon that we as human beings experience, because we experience we as human beings, we experience, inverted commas, non-physical phenomenon, right? Such as memories, dreams, thoughts, emotions. And those things are definitely there. We all know them, we all experience them, right? Right? And science can't currently explain them other than electrical activity in the brain. No, that's fair enough, okay? Well, I'm just trying to say, I mean, if anything, science is, modern neuroscience's ability to validate, to show that there is a correspondence between, psychological activity and brain activity, shows that memories, dreams, you know, thoughts are actually objective phenomenon, right? That exist in the phenomenal universe, right? It's just that we just don't understand how they work yet, right? But what I'm trying to say is that although we perceive them as individuals subjectively, they are not actually subjective experiences. They are actually phenomena, right? In the same way that a lightning storm is a phenomena that occurs in the world, a memory is a phenomena that occurs in the world. It occurs in your brain, it occurs in your consciousness, but it is a phenomena nonetheless. And just as a lightning storm is objectifiable, so is a memory. Right? Alright, so what does this have to do with the nature of truth? The distinction that I'm making is that we cannot invalidate so-called subjective experience as invalid, and say that, well, because it's happening inside of a person and not coming through their physical senses, therefore that experience is invalid. It's just foolish. It's silly, right? Because we all have minds, we all have emotions, we all have dreams. And what we really need to do as people is try to understand those things, to understand why they exist and why they're a part of us, because they are a part of us, and I would argue they're an important part of us. Yeah, yeah. So to summarize, there is no such thing there is no such thing as subjective phenomenon. All phenomenon that occur in the universe, in this universe, are objective, right? All phenomenon that occur in the universe are objective phenomenon, right? Yes, we as human beings experience phenomenon subjectively because we are subjects, but those phenomenon that we experience are not subjective phenomenon. They are objective phenomenon. It is only that empiricism has yet to be able to classify them. Okay, and I'm going to try and get to the conclusion now. What's interesting and what's great about this ideology and why I think the ideology of the phenomenal universe is important, and why I think it's I would hope an improvement on the ideologies perhaps that have come before it, and I'm just being hopeful. I'm not being, you know, uh, hubristic or anything. Um, is that I think that it answers some questions for us as human beings. Okay, and for example, one of the questions that the phenomenal universe answers is this one. There's this very famous Zen koan, which goes something like, well, it goes like this. It goes, does a tree falling in the woods with no one there to hear it make a sound? Okay, and that's a really, it's a really deep philosophical question, because basically, you know, this is Zen koan, right? And basically, what it's asking is, well, does reality exist independently of our perception, right? Now, I'm not saying that the theory of the phenomenal universe, as I've proposed in this discussion, um, you know, ultimately solves that question, but I think it does offer a solution. I mean, I personally believe it does answer the question, right? But I'm not so arrogant to advocate to you to think that my solution is the only. It's what I believe, okay, and I want you to listen. I want you to listen to what I've got to say, and hopefully it can help you. But I'm not going to tell you that this is the truth. I personally think it is the truth, right? I really do think it's the truth. But I can't make that decision for you. Only you can decide what's true, right? So for yourself, right? What you want to believe about the world, right? We can all agree the sky's blue. Cool, okay. This is a complex subject. I would hope that you like what I've said and think and find it interesting, and hopefully what I've said is helpful to you. Okay. Um, but I think the ideology of the phenomenal universe solves the Z koan of, does a tree falling in the woods with no one there to hear it make a sound? The answer is yes, it does, because the tree exists independently of the observer, right? The tree is an objective phenomenon in the objective universe, and the tree exists independently of our observation of it, right? In the same way that um, the planet Neptune is out there. Okay, the planet Neptune is out there in our solar system, and it's revolving around the sun, and it's very big and very heavy. It weighs like 100 times that, maybe not 100 times, more like 50 times that of the Earth. It's big and it's blue, and like no one is looking at it most of the time. Like human beings only very occasionally look at it through the telescope, right? Um, you know, it kind of seems really silly to me, the idea that, like, well, when we stop looking at Neptune through the telescope, like Neptune magically disappears and just isn't there, right? Because no one's looking at it. Um, I think, I mean, you can believe that if you want, but I think it's really, really silly. I think it's a really silly idea. It's a bit like saying, does the Earth disappear when I close my eyes? No, it doesn't. It's still there. And just to just as a side note, this is the whole problem with the simulation hypothesis, that that the universe is not real, and it's just a simulation. It's silly. It's really silly. Okay. Um, if you, it's so silly. Okay, it really is silly. I'm not gonna say. I'm not gonna go so far as to be. I'm not gonna be any more rude about the simulation hypothesis. But it really is silly. Okay. Um, because there's a lot of evidence. There's a lot of evidence that it's not true. Right. Okay. So, you know, what is the nature of truth? The truth is that which is. The truth is what is. The truth is the fact. The truth is reality as it is. Reality without subjective bias. Reality as it is. That's my understanding of the nature of truth. Um, I personally find that as a helpful, you know, moral and ideological compass on which to base my conclusions, and sort of form my ideologies, and hopefully form a moral ideology about how to live in the world. Okay, that reality is real, that other human beings are real, that other human beings matter. They're real people. They're not just they're not just figments of my imagination. They're real people, right? Um, and I think that that's a good ideology. Okay, so I hope my explanation of the nature of truth and the nature of empiricism and epistemology and the concept of the phenomenal universe has been hopefully been really helpful to you. I really hope that. Um, you know, I'm sharing it with you because I personally find it helpful. I personally find these ideologies helpful in understanding the world, right? And the more that we understand the world, and the more we understand ourselves, hopefully, the better people we can become. All right, all right. There's a gorgeous sunrise over there in the east, in London, where I live. Oh, well, I can share it. I can show you. Yeah, cool. Oh, sorry, my desk's a mess. See if we can see some sunrise. Oh, there it is. Yeah, clouds. I think my camera's not getting the color, but it's nice nonetheless. All right, all right. Whoops. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you found my video interesting. Um, and I think it's an important thing for all of us to inquire into the nature of truth. Peace be with you. God bless you.